here after Colorado's 8th preseason practice. Brian Howell enjoying a well-deserved day off with the family.
Yeah, he's taking a day. So Pat Rooney is here joining you. Thanks for having me, Adam.
It'll be good to get a little different perspective. First, let's kind of recap practice today. You asked Mel Tucker about a report Neil Welk had about Tariq Luckett moving from receivers to defensive back. Mel Tucker confirmed that. It sounds like this is a permanent move for him.
Yeah, and obviously we all know they needed help at cornerback. We saw a lot of defections in the spring, guys transferring out. It's been a place where they needed some depth. And Coach Tucker said, Luckett's a guy that's played this in high school, played it at a high level. It was clear that he didn't make the young man switch, but that there was something he was willing to do. Obviously, they have a lot of depth at receiver, not so much at cornerback. So if Tariq's willing to make this move, obviously he can help the Buffs at cornerback, especially almost immediately this fall.
Yeah, to your point, if Tariq Luckett stays at receiver, he's not playing there at least anytime soon. Yeah. He's just going to be practicing. He could potentially, if he shows some things in this camp, be a backup at cornerback going into the season.
Right, we could see him on the field. An injury here and there, ineffectiveness here and there. We could see him on the field within the first few games in a non-conference schedule. So hasn't taken a college class yet, but he's probably very able to do the math on that one and see that the Buffs are pretty loaded at receiver. We don't know how it will pan out long term, if this will be a permanent home for Luckett on that side of the ball, but it will be for this fall, and obviously the Buffs can use the help at cornerback.
And I asked Mel Tucker about another cornerback, freshman cornerback, DJ Oates. He came in, had never played a down of cornerback in his life, was kind of a late bloomer, but he made the comment that you can't coach his speed. So it's going to be, I think with corner, as long as you have the hips to do it, it's a position maybe a year in, you can kind of get used to it, but he's another guy that he could potentially work his way up the depth chart pretty quickly here.
Yeah, we've all talked about yourself and Brian about the cornerback situation with this team, and if we can get a couple young guys to come in and make contributions right away, that's going to be a huge boost to this defense. Obviously not a lot of depth across the whole rotation, especially at cornerback. So very encouraging for Buffs fans to hear that there's some young guys that might be on the cusp of getting in there and contributing to that group sooner than later.
Tomorrow they're going to run through their first scrimmage. Mike McIntyre said he put no added weight on a scrimmage. I never believed him.
Yeah.
Mel Tucker's honest that this means more. It's real football, as he put it.
Yeah, he just told us a few minutes ago that he weights it a little bit more than your average practice because it's live. It's guys competing. It's guys going after one another. And that's pretty consistent with the message that Coach Tucker has kind of relayed since he first got in here about competing, about toughness, that this is going to be a physical football team. He also mentioned today that beginning to see some separation in some of those position groups, and I'm sure the scrimmage tomorrow on Saturday will be another big step in that direction, starting to see some separation in those battles. I'm sure scrimmage might take that another step forward on Saturday morning.
I had a chance to talk to defensive line coach Jimmy Brumbaugh. I thought maybe they could get away with redshirting one of those freshmen, but he said no, we're going to have to use all of these guys, and he's never had this young of a group that had to play right away like this. You talk about concerns about this football team. For me, that's probably number one.
For me, I still go back to the offensive line as concern number one on the team. And it's something me and Brian Howell have talked about on our Buff Zone podcast. But defensive line has to be right up there. And with the youth, as you mentioned, those guys are going to have to step in and contribute right away. Are they going to be ready? Are they going to be physical enough to do so? Remains to be seen. It's a tough position to step into and play at and contribute at this level up front on the defense. So, it's good to hear Coach Brumbaugh say that. And obviously, it's good those freshmen are getting acclimated here that first week and maybe a few of them stepping up to the challenge. But it's going to be a process with those guys. And I'm sure this preseason will continue to be a feeling out process for all those young guys up front.
You had a chance to talk to Tony Brown, Darren Cheverini, the receivers coach. What did you take away from those conversations?
Yeah, I like Tony Brown. He's an interesting character, obviously someone that Coach Cheverini recruited at Texas Tech and basically followed him here to Boulder a few years later. And not the first guy that comes to mind. That receiver group, obviously LaVisca Chenault and K.D. Nixon are going to be the main guys in what should be a very good receiver class for the Buffs. But Tony Brown's kind of that glue guy. Doesn't say a lot, goes about his business very quietly, and is effective. We saw him make some plays last year, especially LaVisca out. Laviska ideally is going to be commanding a lot of attention from opposing defenses, and Tony Brown's a guy that you might think you can overlook as your defense, but the idea is that he will make defensive pay if that happens. He did so in limited opportunities last year, and I know as a senior this year, he's kind of really looking forward to taking advantage of those opportunities. There's going to be plenty of balls to go around with an experienced quarterback running this offense. If Steven gets time up front, I think he'll do a great job at distributing the ball to the open guy, and I would think Tony Brown could be right in that mix.
Yeah, the one thing you always hear about Tony Brown is consistency. Yeah. He's where he needs to be, and that's a huge luxury to have on this offense. A year ago, we talked in the preseason camp when Brian had a day off about kind of our big picture predictions. Yeah. Brian and I both had them going to a bowl game. You were a little bit more pessimistic. Yeah. Obviously, no one saw the trajectory last season was going to go 5-0 start, 0-7 finish. But what do you see from this team? Are you kind of in that same mindset as a year ago, or are you more optimistic?
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same mindset. I guess I'm still hesitant to put a prediction out there. We'll certainly do that for our preview section in a couple weeks. But I'm still leaning towards not in a bowl game, kind of the 4-8, 5-7 realm for this team. I think individuals will be better. Right now I'm having a hard time seeing where and how exactly this team will be better than last year. I think Steven can be better. Obviously, having Laviska Shenault healthy a whole season will help. I'm still kind of pessimistic about the defense, mostly about the depth. Again, there's some key characters over there that are I think will have good seasons. Nate Lamb and obviously Mustafa Johnson, I think, are going to be very good players for this defense. I guess on a collective whole, and especially when you consider how much tougher the schedule is this year, I have a hard time seeing this team being markedly better in the wins and losses column as what we saw last year. Maybe my mind will change in a couple of weeks. I'm still kind of open to that. But after the first basically full week of camp at this point, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
It's difficult to make a prediction with this football team.
Yeah, we don't get to watch practice, certainly.
And also, you look at the Pac-12 South, aside from Utah, so many question marks with those teams. How good are those teams going to be? How many true winnable games are there on the schedule? We don't really know sitting here in mid-August. And also, you mentioned the depth defensively. If I told you right now, Nate Lamb and Mustafa Johnson and the key pieces, they're not going to lose more than two of those cornerbacks or one of those cornerbacks, that kind of changed your thinking too, right? And you can't predict how healthy this team is going to stay.
Sure, I'd agree with that. And as far as the division, there's always, the way I look at those things, there's always going to be a team that defies expectations the wrong way. Maybe it's Utah. Maybe they don't live up to their expectations this year. There's always going to be another team like the Buffs were in 2016 that's going to defy expectations in a more positive way. Maybe the Buffs are that team this year, but maybe it's Arizona State in another year under Herm Edwards. Maybe it's UCLA in their second year under Chip Kelly. So there are a lot of variables in the division. There certainly is room for a team to kind of step up to the pack, and certainly the Buffs could be that team. There are a lot of question marks in that division. They're going to have to steal some wins on the road, I think, in order to maybe get to 6-6 and squeak into a bowl game. I have a hard time being confident that's going to happen just because this has not been a great road team in recent seasons.
All right, Pat, thanks for filling in for Brian today. I appreciate it.
Anytime. We'll get him back here whenever he's done fishing.
Well, tomorrow's my day off, so you're going to see analysis from Brian Howell and Chase Howell after tomorrow's scrimmage.